In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Glory be to Jesus Christ, my dear brothers and sisters. My name is Yaroslav Yasenets. I'm the Orthodox priest here in Ukraine, and I used to serve in the Orthodox Church of Ukraine for 7 years. I have the MA degree in theological studies in Holy Cross Hellenic College in Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States. I am the author of 2 books in theology in Ukrainian, and I am also a military chaplain in the armed forces of Ukraine during this time of war. I was ordained as a priest in 2018. At the moment, it was the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Kiev Patriarchate. I was ordained by Patriarch Filaret here in Kiev in St. Volodymyr's Cathedral. But the next year, in 2019, the Church of Kiev Patriarchate was transformed into the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, which was recognized by Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople and 3 other churches under Greek control, but it caused the great schism and division in the world Orthodoxy. And so up to this year, I was the priest of this newly recognized church, which is considered the most patriotic, the most Ukrainian, and it is now the state, we can say it is the state church of Ukraine, because it has the full support of the president, the parliament, the different committees on religious affairs, and it is used by the state for different purposes. And I decided to leave this church structure. I have written the official letter to Metropolitan Epiphanius, who is the head of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, and he was my ruling bishop. I sent an official letter to him that I leave this jurisdiction, and I am now under the omophorion of Patriarch Filaret. I will describe a little bit later the complex relationship between these 2 hierarchs. And I issued already one very long video in 3 parts in Ukrainian describing the problems of this church. And so now I decided to issue this video in English for my foreign brothers and sisters to understand all the wrongdoing that is now in this church structure, how it happened, why is it continued, and who benefits from this. And my Christian consciousness does not allow me to stay in this structure anymore. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, I need your help. I need your help to spread this information in order to give it to as many people in the Western world as possible, because it seems that people from the Western world, which we now call the civilized world, so to say, can issue Ukrainian situation from abroad much more than we Ukrainians here can change under this government. So I leave the Orthodox Church of Ukraine because things are just not simply not all right, they are terrible. The church has ruined itself. Nothing good was done for the last 7 years of the church existence, and all the good initiatives that were created in the past 30 years in time of the Kiev Patriarchate, they are now either ruined or very, very weak. Nothing was changed for better. And of course, someone can say that 7 years is a rather short time. Well, perhaps it is short. I'm not sure. I believe that it has enough time, especially considering that the Orthodox Church of Ukraine had all the support from the state possible, but also you see that these initiatives, that they are not even starting to develop. There is no even any foundation, any basis for some good changes to occur. And that is a very, very troubling sign. For the people who don't know, I'm going to describe very briefly the situation in Ukrainian Orthodoxy for the past decades. Actually, this story is very, very complex. I have a detailed description in English on the history of our church with all the evidence that I collected from people who were the living witnesses on how our church was created and founded in the 90s so I will try to describe this as briefly as possible. So we have several branches of the Orthodoxy now in Ukraine, which do not recognize each other, unfortunately. Well, it is not new for the Orthodox world, because unlike the principle of the Roman Catholic Church, where you have the Pope of Rome and the direct vertical hierarchy for all over the world, it is like the pyramid, where almost anything important is decided on the level of the Vatican or of the Pope. In Orthodoxy, this structure is built from below. So the principle of the Orthodox ecclesiology, the teaching about the church, is that wherever you have the bishop, you have the church. So you have a legitimate or consecrated bishop and priests and faithful laymen around him. So it is a diocese. A diocese is a small local church. And these small local churches communicate with each other, and in order to survive, to help each other, they form a kind of administrative structure. And then you have these bigger churches, the Church of Constantinople, the Church of Serbia, of Ukraine, of Georgia, of Russia, the Patriarchate of Alexandria, of Africa, the Patriarchate of Jerusalem, the Orthodox Church of America, and all the other local churches you have, but they are actually just the administrative structure of different local small dioceses. And actually a diocese is an independent church, and it is as independent as any other. But unfortunately, there are a lot of struggles and quarrels between these local churches. And for example, now the Orthodox Church, Orthodox world is very, very divided. So there is no communion between the Russian Church and the Constantinople Church. There is no communion between the Church of Antiochia and of Alexandria and some others. Of course, the Orthodox Church of America, which was granted the independent status by the Russian Church, is not recognized by the Patriarchate of Constantinople. There is no intercommunion, and even on Mount Athos, as we know now, there is one monastery which is not in communion with others. So it is not something new for the Orthodox world to have parallel hierarchies even on one territory. And the reason this happened in Ukraine is that for a long time the territory of Ukraine was occupied by the Russian Empire and then the Soviet Union, which was the communist continuation of the Russian Empire. And the church was under the state control, but when finally the Soviet Union broke apart. From 1989 in Ukraine, the new independent Ukrainian autocephalous Orthodox Church started its formation, and it was the will of people. It was not created by state or something like that. It was the will of people. People decided that they don't want to pray in Russian, that they don't want to follow the orders from bishops who were appointed in Moscow. They want to have something of their own, and it is only a natural desire of all Orthodox people to have their own local church. It was always like that, and according to the canons, whenever we have an independent Orthodox state, you have to have a local Orthodox church if the people desire it, and people in the 90s desired it very much, but the church in Russia is still greatly, almost entirely controlled by the state government, so they did not want to recognize this hierarchy which was created since 1989, and that is why the Orthodox Church in Ukraine was considered schismatic for a very long time. Since 1992, it was the Church of Kiev Patriarchate. It was led by Patriarch Filaret, who is very widely known in the Orthodox world, and his reputation among many people is rather uncertain, because he served for many decades. He is 96 years old now. He served for many decades as the hierarch of the Russian Church. But when Ukraine gained the independence, he decided that it is true, and according to the canons, that Ukraine must have its own local Ukrainian church, and he became the leader of this newly formed Ukrainian church very soon. And that is why the Russian church called him schismatic. They broke up all connections with him, and they even issued in 1997 an anathema on him. And unfortunately, this great hierarch had the reputation of schismatic in the Orthodox world for a very long time, and all the hierarchy and sacraments of the Ukrainian church were considered invalid. Also in Ukraine, there is the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is now led by Metropolitan Onufrius, and it is in the communion with the Russian Church and all the other churches in the world. It used to be the continuation of the Russian Church in Ukraine. But since the big war in Ukraine began 4 years ago, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, I will call it for simplicity, because these names are look rather similar, so just for simplicity, I will call it the Church of Onufrius, the Church of Filaret, the Church of Epiphanius. I'm really sorry, because indeed there is only one Church of our Lord Jesus Christ, but for Western people to describe it in a more simple way, I will use the name of the current leaders of the church. So the Church of Metropolitan Onufrius is connected to the Russian Church, but since the beginning of the big war, it is struggling to receive the independent status. So the Church of Filaret, the Kiev Patriarchate, was not recognized for many years, and it was called schismatic. The sacraments were considered invalid. The priests who went abroad, for example, were not welcomed and not accepted. So it was a huge problem. And even now, this reputation remains in many other churches, especially those who are in the spheres of control of Russia, like the Patriarchate of Jerusalem, for example, which is largely influenced by Russia. So, but it is my personal true belief that this is the Kiev Patriarchate is the valid church. It has the valid sacraments. The priests who are ordained there are the true priests, the true Orthodox priests who can perform the sacraments. I know that many people who listen to this video are going to disagree with me, but it is my personal belief, and I am the priest of this church. Now, in 2019, the President Poroshenko and Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople struck a bargain. They made an agreement that the church in Ukraine will be recognized by the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople. The new leader was elected, the young Metropolitan Epiphanius, who actually was the apprentice and the servant of Patriarch Filaret. He was very young, he was very inexperienced, but the Greeks set a condition that Patriarch Filaret, due to his some problems with his reputation, that he was considered schismatic for a long time, that he must not become the head of the new church. So that is why Metropolitan Epiphanius was elected. And at first, the newly formed Orthodox Church of Ukraine, as I call it, the Church of Epiphanius, to distinguish it from the Ukrainian Orthodox Church under Onufrius, it was recognized by 4 other churches in the world, and it became actually the state structure. The first agreement, it was an unofficial agreement, but still it existed, that Epiphanius will be the official leader of the church, but he will follow all the advices of Patriarch Filaret, because Patriarch Filaret is very experienced and he knows all the things about church governing. And Epiphanius will be like his official representative. But unfortunately, Epiphanius refused to follow this agreement, and he started governing on his own. And that created a lot of problems. I will describe later the relationship of Epiphanius and Filaret. But this created the huge problems, because Epiphanius, indeed, he is a very inexperienced leader. He's very young, he's very proud. Being on the second row for all his life, for his entire life, he was not even one of the oldest bishops of the Kiev Patriarchate under Filaret. He was one of the youngest. And so now he's trying to do the best to show himself as, you know, the best of the best, the true leader and so on. But it is actually quite awkward. And he cannot manage to govern church properly. And all the problems that I describe here are mainly rooted in his bad way of governing. So at first, in 2019, it seemed that Epiphanius will renew the church somehow, that he will create new tendencies and so on, because Patriarch Filaret, his way of governing the church was very harsh. He was very strict on everyone, and the bishops and priests were actually sometimes afraid of him. So they thought that perhaps Epiphanius will be a little more gentle on them. And so it seemed for the first, he was very open. He tried to listen to the priests. He tried to draw attention to himself. He tried to portray himself as a very popular young leader. And he has such a reputation of a very educated hierarch. Actually, he's not. A reputation of young, charismatic, active, and so on. But all his activity, it is just for people to see. It is not a really good and constructive, creative activity. So at first Epiphanius listened to his priest, but very soon he started avoiding them. Ukrainian rich businessmen, the oligarchs, they built him the residency in the large mansion. It is very, very beautifully decorated, and Epiphanius hired good security guards for himself. I'm not sure why a monk, since every bishop is a monk, why a monk has to be afraid of someone and guard himself from someone. I don't know why why it happened, but still it is so. And it is impossible now to meet with Metropolitan Epiphanius. Only very special, very distinguished bishops from his very, very close surroundings can communicate with him directly and meet with him. And all the others, they almost have no such opportunity. And it is very sad. Because any, let's say, democracy or equality and especially brotherly love in this church is already lost. Epiphanius is on himself with his very closed assistants, and everyone else is remained like outside. He doesn't care about them. It is very, very sad. You know, in Ukraine it is now popular to criticize the Orthodox Church in Russia, and there are indeed many things that it has to be criticized on, and especially what concerns the leader of the Russian Church, Patriarch Cyril Gundayev, who also is like a special man. And the Russian Church is also a state structure there. And Patriarch Cyril, he's known for his luxury lifestyle. You can look it up on internet. And he's also surrounded by state security, and priests also don't have communication with him. He never talks to anyone. He's very closed. He's very proud of himself and of his position. But the problem is that Epiphanius became the same. He is constantly meeting with politicians. He is meeting with representatives of media, of international organizations, of like different official structures, but not with his priests, and moreover not with lay people. He doesn't meet with lay people. For example, Metropolitan Onufrios is much more open to the clergy and to laymen who want to talk to him, to meet with him. He is much more open. But Epiphanius is not. Epiphanius, he is just sitting in his rich mansion behind the armored doors, surrounded by all this security, and you cannot actually meet with him and talk to him. His sermons, he's reading them from paper, so he's not talking directly to the people, preaching. He has this sermon written and he just reads it with a very boring voice. And some people even say that he is not writing these sermons himself, that they are composed by someone else from his close surrounding. And his sermons usually they lack any theological depth. For example, you can listen to the sermons of very popular Orthodox theologian Anthony of Surosh, and also the hierarch of Church of Cyprus, Athanasius of Limassol, or the Patriarch of Jerusalem, and many other good hierarchs who are preaching from their heart, who are talking to people who are gathered on the divine liturgy. But Epiphanius is just reading the words that were earlier composed for him, and unfortunately that looks very poor, that looks sometimes very miserable. It seems that he is not capable of speaking without paper laid in front of him, and he also lacks the proper theological education, because he is considered a very educated metropolitan. Some state media even title him as educated metropolitan, but actually you can hardly find any of his articles. He doesn't have many books written. There is one book, but it is composed of his sermons and public interviews. So it is not a book on theology. His PhD thesis cannot be found anywhere. So why does he have to keep it in secret? Probably it is because there are some problems with this thesis. In Ukraine, there is no rule that all texts of theses of these works in the universities must be published. There is no law on it, so it can be hidden. But why would someone need to hide his thesis, his book, his work? It is not understandable. Another very important question that many people want to ask Epiphanius is what happened to him when the Great War in Ukraine began, the Russian invasion began in 2022. Because when the Ukrainian people were very scared, many tried to flee to the western regions of Ukraine, and others tried to join the military and go and fight. They needed the support of Metropolitan Epiphanius, but he was hidden somewhere. He gave an interview in an empty room, and he stated that he was in his main St. Michael's Cathedral all the time, in his residency, just in the basement. But there is information that he also fled Ukraine, and for some time that he was outside Ukraine. So he didn't go to support the armed forces, to support the military, to support this brave man who stood against the Russian invasion with weapons in their hands. He just was hidden somewhere, and he didn't, he spoke on the matter. Of course, he condemned the Russian aggression, as any sane man would do. But it was really not enough. And he said that there was this Russian group, partisan group, who invaded Kiev, and they tried to look him up and kill him. And he said that with the help of the security services of Ukraine, this group was eliminated and I was kept safe. But it is not a position of a Christian. It is not a position of a bishop. It is not a position of a man even. It is a position of a coward. Really brave man, and especially a Christian man, would strive to face this aggression, would strive to become a martyr at the end, but not to hide somewhere, especially if you are the head of the church. But let's say it is up to him, but there is nothing to be proud of in this position. Okay, so we talked enough about the personality of Metropolitan Epiphanius. Let's talk about some other very bad issues in the church life. So we can begin that there are very few parishes in the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, the Church of Epiphanius. The Church of Onufrios has a lot more parishes, it has a lot more priests, more seminaries, and it can supply the people who are in need almost in every village. It can supply people with a place to build the church and supply with a priest. With the Church of Epiphanius, it is much worse, because there are many churches in the western regions in Ukraine. It was not so heavily struck by the Soviet regime and all the oppressions, so the Ukrainian spirit remained there more. So the Ukrainian church has stronger positions there. But in other parts of Ukraine, central, eastern, and southern part of Ukraine, the position of the Church of Epiphanius is very, very weak. There are very few priests, very few churches, unfortunately, and these remote dioceses, they are not taken care of anyhow. Unfortunately, the bishops there are on their own, the priests can hardly survive, and the Metropolitan of Kiev is not doing anything to support them, to help them. Also the level of theological education is very, very poor, and the priests who come out of our seminaries, they're often very uneducated. And I personally witnessed, as in one of the dioceses in the eastern Ukraine, a priest who was just ordained, he didn't even know the Nicene Creed of Faith. I believe in one God, the Father, creator of heaven and earth, and so on and so on. He didn't know these words. He had to read them from the paper. Can you imagine that? He was a military officer, and his military unit needed a chaplain, and they asked the bishop, please send us a chaplain. So he ordained this officer who had a very remote understanding about the gospel, about the church tradition, about theology, very, very remote understanding, and he was just ordained for that. And there are many, many examples like that. So there are very few priests, and many of them are unfortunately are engaged in different like bad activities like drinking, smuggling, and other things. Some of them were earlier divorced and later married another woman, so they have the second wife, which is prohibited by the church canons, and so on and so on. And also their sermons are of very bad quality, and they are not acting like a true missionaries. The missionary activity in the Church of Epiphanius is very, very weak. So the modern priest in this secular world, the modern priest has to be very educated in very different aspects of life. He has to be a traditionalist, but he has to understand the modern life, and he has to know how to give the answers on these bad modern issues from the point of view of the church tradition, from the point of view of our fathers of the first centuries, from the point of view of Byzantine theology. He must know that. He must know how to speak to an educated man and uneducated, to a nuclear scientist, to a simple worker, to a, computer engineer, blogger, or a poor widow with 5 children, to a criminal, to a prisoner, to a politician, to an atheist, a skeptic, a Catholic, a Buddhist, of people who don't know anything about this world and are not sure whether there is any spiritual aspects or not. So the modern priest has to know all this and know how to give answers to all these different categories of people. And in the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, they are not taught to do that. We don't have enough missionaries among the young people. We don't have missionaries on different, unprotected social categories like drug addicts or orphans or other people, and mostly Protestant denomination take this niche, and Protestants in Ukraine, they are growing because they're constantly learning, they're praying, they're preaching in the way they can do it, and so they gather more people around them. And the growth of Protestant denominations is the sin of Orthodox priests, Because if Orthodox priests would be able to give the necessary answers to the people, people would follow Orthodoxy, because we have the valid sacraments. Protestants don't have the sacraments as we understand them. They preach the word of God, they make sermons, and they help people in practical things. But if Orthodox people, laymen and clergy especially, would do this, the Protestants would not have more people than we do. And unfortunately, during these 7 years, the situation with education of priests and ordaining new priests did not become any better. And considering all the opportunities that now the state offers to the Church of Epiphanius, it is a total catastrophe, with the low number of clergy and even lower quality of how we pray, how we live, how we show ourselves to public, how we preach, how we help people. It is an entirely it is a catastrophe. Also, very bad thing, a terrible thing, is the very few number of monks. Orthodox Church cannot live without monks, without monasteries. Monks are the blood of the Church, as one of the Gerondas once stated. So without monastic life, you cannot imagine true Orthodoxy. And in the Church of Epiphanius, there are very few monks, very few monasteries. And I repeat, it is a catastrophe. Somehow in Church of Onufrius, young people, old and often very young people, are willing to devote their life to God, to enter the covenant and be a monk for their entire life. In the Ukrainian Church of Epiphanius, for some reason, very few people can be persuaded to become monks and to follow Christ in this way. So we are doing something wrong. And nobody can say what we're doing wrong. In Kiev, there are only 3 monasteries of the Church of Epiphanius and about 7 monasteries of the Church of Onufrius. And you know that in Epiphanius Church also we have very few women's monasteries. In Church of Onufrius, much more. Even now, when the Ecumenical Patriarchate recognizes our church, the Church of Epiphanius, I mean, there is no communication with the monasteries on the Mount Athos, for example, or in Greece. Our novices could be sent there to their monasteries to become true monks there and then come back to Ukraine to teach others and establish new monasteries, but it is not done. Experienced monks can be invited from Greece, asked to come to become the spiritual leaders of our monasteries, but it is not done for some reason. Why not? I cannot understand that. So it is all again rooted in the poor qualities of the governing of the Metropolitan. So he doesn't know, he doesn't want to establish this communication. And it is really terrible. As you probably know, because this was the scandal for the whole Orthodox world, already 2 years passed when the biggest monastery, the Kiev Lavra, the monastery of the Kiev Caves, was taken by force from the Church of Onufrius and given to Epiphanius, because the buildings of this monastery, since they are very old and historic, they are the property of the state. So when Bolsheviks, the Soviets, seized Ukraine, they tried to destroy the church, so they took the monastery from the church and made a museum there. And officially it is now a museum. But when the Church of Onufrius was there, these monks, there were about a little less than 200 monks. And there were constant services, there were old monks, the Gerondas in Church of Epiphanius there are no gerondas, and old spiritual leaders of the monks. It is for Orthodox people, it is understandable how important these gerondas are for our monastic life and for the life of the church in general. So there are no gerondas. Which raises again new questions. Why the Holy Spirit brings the gerondas to the Church of Onufrios but not to the Church of Epiphanius? Why? What are we doing wrong? What is the problem? But when the Lavra was forcibly taken and given to the Church of Epiphanius with the help of state authorities, then as we know, the number of monks there remains now only about 6 people. There was one Archimandrite Avrami who said that he wants to be a part of independent Ukrainian church, and he came to Epiphanius and said that I want to become the new leader of Ukrainian Lavra, as they put it. And he was promised that if he brings some more monks, then he will become, but he brought only 6 people, but in a word of that, he was made a bishop in a very, very short time. He received this award, let's say, from Epiphanius. But all the buildings of Lavra are now occupied by the former communists, the workers of the museum, and there is no prayer life, there is no monastic life there. Sometimes in these old ancient churches there used to be the liturgy there, but now there are concerts, and there are even, you know, some TV shows filmed in these old churches because there is no one to pray, and very, very few people come to Lavra. Formerly, when it was the Church of Onufrios, hundreds and hundreds of people came to Lavra every day, and especially on Sundays, and you can see this in old pictures and videos. But now these churches, they are half empty. Maybe about from 50 to 70 people come there on Sunday. And on weekdays there are usually no services, and if there are, maybe about several like 10 or 20 people can come, and it is not some conspiracy, it is an official information. You can look it up on the internet, on social media, and you will see the pictures of how of the amount of people who were there then and the people who are coming now. So, and also these priests who serve in Lavra, there used to be earlier, there used to be very educated priests there, but now most priests who come there know just you know, ordinary things: how to baptize someone, how to grant the sacrament of marriage, how to bless a car, how to conduct an Orthodox rite of funeral, and mostly they don't know anything else. And can you imagine, even in the seminaries, the professors, not just students, not PhD students, but the professors, they don't have the publications in theology in Scopus magazines. And it is a scandal. You cannot imagine any Western university where a PhD student or even an MA student does not have Scopus. And in Ukrainian seminaries of Epiphanius, even most of the professors don't have these kinds of publications. So you can imagine how low the level of education of the priests there. And such things as, for example, the old liturgical rites, like the liturgy of Saint Jacob or liturgy of Saint Gregory, liturgy, Syriac liturgies, and some others. They are not developed there. They are not research on this. There are no works in ascetics, for example, and most other aspects of theology remain just untouched because nobody is interested in that, unfortunately, and there is no cooperation with other universities. For example, 5 years ago, I personally found a program, MA in theology in the Holy Cross Hellenic College. That is the College of the Ecumenical Patriarchate in Boston, USA. And I found a place to study there, and I won a scholarship directly from the Ecumenical Patriarch. But officially I did not receive any help from Epiphanius or any one of his assistants, just because they're not interested in that. And it's not about me, it's about the system in general. Young students, seminarians could be assisted to search for them the places of further study in order to study there and then come to Ukraine and be better priests. But nobody is interested in that. For example, the Ukrainian Catholic universities, they are in constant communication with other universities, not just Catholic, but also secular universities. But our Orthodox people are not willing to do the same. Also, the big problems, the great issue is that both the Metropolitan and most of the hierarchs remain silent on such important social problems as the rise of atheism, secularism, so-called secular ideas, secular values who come from the West to Ukraine, from the Western liberals. They are invading Ukraine and ruining our traditional pillars of our society. They remain silent on abortion, on decline of births, on sodomites who are becoming more and more popular in Ukraine, like the so-called LGBT community. The church does not want to speak on this, and the church does not want to criticize the government. For example, even in totalitarian Russia, the church criticizes sometimes, very rarely, but still, in totalitarian society, they criticize some secular initiatives of the politicians. In Georgia, the patriarch of Georgia in Tbilisi, he has a great influence on people and on politicians. Politicians actually ask for his advice on whether do or do not some things. In Greece, priests can often be seen on different demonstrations against like different secular problems who are which rise in Greek society, but in Ukraine you can hardly see that. And also very often conservatism is the root of Orthodoxy. Orthodoxy by its nature is very conservative. They cannot be modern Orthodoxy or liberal Orthodoxy. It's absurd. And if you speak that you are a conservative, you have conservative views, usually by the most, let's say, patriotic, I don't consider them patriots, but they say they are very great patriots, the liberal patriots say you are the agent of Moscow, because only in Moscow you have these traditional values and so on and so on, and Ukrainian patriots, they want to be the part of the Western world. And so if you are against liberal values, if you are actually speaking about conservative Orthodox views, you are considered an agent of Moscow. Can you imagine that? It's a scandal. It's absurd. Also, very strong issue is that in the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, the Church of Epiphanius, no parishes are allowed to be created outside of Ukraine. And it was actually one of the worst points of this tomos, this recognition from the Ecumenical Patriarch, because the Kiev Patriarch, the Church of Philaret, we created lots of parishes outside Ukraine, in Western Europe, in the United States, Canada, Southern America. Some of them were even in the Middle East. Some of them were in Russia. These were the parishes for Ukrainians who are living in Russia. The parishes in Australia we also had. But it was the undisputable condition of the Ecumenical Patriarch that we must not have parishes outside Ukraine, that all the parishes there will now belong to the jurisdiction of Patriarch Bartholomew. It was very important for him because he wanted to enlarge the number of his people by the cost of Ukrainians abroad. But many Ukrainian parishes refused. They said that for all the decades we were Ukrainians, we were not Greeks. Now we want to remain Ukrainians. And Epiphanius could not accept them under his homophorion. And now when the Great War began, many Ukrainians fled abroad and they cannot find Ukrainian church. Often they have to go to Greek Catholic churches, the churches of the Unia who are speaking Ukrainian, because they want a Ukrainian priest and they cannot find Ukrainian priests. We could establish the missions abroad. It would be very easy. We could not call it a parish. We could call that a temporary mission. For example, a priest could be sent to some cities in Western Europe where there are most Ukrainians, be there sometime, celebrate in the liturgy in some kind of hired room for people to come to him. He could preach, he could baptize, he could grant confessions and Eucharist and so on for some time, and then come back to Ukraine. It could be organized very, very easily, but just no one wants to do that. And that is why the people who used to be Orthodox are now becoming Catholics, because Catholic Church offers them this condition. They're having the Greek Catholic Unia Ukrainian priests, and people are coming to them. And also, if Epiphanius was a stronger personality, unfortunately, he will probably never become strong, but if he was stronger personality, he could declare that now the situation changed, and since our country is in war, that we refuse to follow the conditions of the Ecumenical Patriarch anymore. For the good of our people, we will establish the parishes abroad. The Ecumenical Patriarch would not draw back his recognition because he also needs it. He also has his personal interest in that. But we could establish parishes abroad as any other local church can. There are Romanian or Antiochian or Greek or Russian parishes all over the world. Even in China there are Russian parishes. For Russians who are living in China. They are not entirely legal, but there are these parishes, they exist there. And only Ukrainian church is discriminated in this way. How come? Why does it have to be like that? It's not right, it's not proper. We had to declare that, but we did not want to do it. And by the way, the process of recognition of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, Church of Epiphanius, it stopped. Recently, Patriarch Bartholomew tried to persuade the Romanian Church to recognize Epiphanius, but they refused. So now we have only Ecumenical Patriarch, the Church of Greece, the Patriarch of Alexandria in Africa, and half of the Church of Cyprus, who recognize Epiphanius as an Orthodox church. And even in Cyprus, many bishops refused to do that. And even in Mount Athos, we will speak on that later, only several monasteries recognized Epiphanius and his church. Others refused to do it, though they are under the control of the ecumenical patriarch. But even he could not persuade them or force them to recognize Epiphanius. They acted on their own understanding. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is the chaplaincy. As you know, now it is the war, and our soldiers who are in very, very difficult conditions need chaplains. But the chaplain service is organized also in a very, very bad way. The state law about chaplaincy, it was adopted, but it is very poorly composed, because in the Church of Epiphanius there exists an institution called the Office of the Military Priest, the Synodal Office of Military Priests, and under this new law, this office has to issue a special document that a person can become a chaplain, and only after that you can enter the military as a chaplain. Otherwise, you can enter, being a priest, you can enter the military as any man, but you will not receive the position of a chaplain. You can be an unofficial chaplain, but it has a lot of problems, which I don't want to describe, because it is understandable only for those who understand the system of Ukrainian military, but I would not advise anyone to be there. To be a priest, to be a chaplain, it is far better if you are on the official position of the chaplain, but you cannot become a chaplain without this document from the church. And unfortunately, this office of military priest, it became a sort of mafia, because they're issuing these documents not to someone who is worthy or to someone who is properly educated or fit for that. There are no tests that could prove that you are qualified enough for a chaplain. They issue them to whomever they want, to whomever they like. And even if there is an educated priest who is fit for the position of the chaplain, but this office doesn't like this priest for any personal reasons, they will not issue this document to me, to such a priest. And that happened to me as well. They didn't want to issue me this official document, this official recognition of the chaplain. That is why I could not become a chaplain officially. And that shows that this group of priests, this mafia inside the church, they do not care about the good of Christians who are now fighting. They just care for their own ideas, and they don't care about our victory. They don't care for the good of the church and for Orthodox people. And moreover, even those chaplains who receive this official recognition, they are very, very few. There are very few priests in general in the Church of Epiphanius, but there are even fewer chaplains. And they cannot cover all the needs of the military. For example, if you understand how the military works, it is divided into brigades, and brigades are divided into regiments, and regiments are divided into like smaller units. So you basically need a priest for a small unit. I don't know how it is properly called under the standards of NATO. More than a platoon, but less than a regiment. You need a priest there who can properly take care of all the people who are in need. And believe me, that Ukrainian people at war are in great need of a priest. But usually you have only one priest for a brigade. So it means that you have one priest for 5,000, approximately 5,000 soldiers. Can you imagine? A priest cannot grant proper support. You cannot even gather these people in one place, because now it is very dangerous to gather a lot of soldiers in one place to celebrate a liturgy, to hear the confessions, to grant the sacraments properly to them, because one priest for 5,000 people basically is not enough. And sometimes, due to the small number of chaplains, you will have one priest for maybe 10,000 soldiers. Can you imagine? So basically the soldiers remain without proper pastoral care. Some Protestants and Catholics cover this need, but since there are fewer of them, and according to the law, most positions of chaplains have to be occupied by Orthodox priests, it creates a very big gap and lots of soldiers who are not taken care of. There are some programs for the volunteer chaplains where the priests of different confessions like Protestant, Orthodox and Catholics act together to support the priests. They're like civilian priests and pastors who come to a certain military unit where there is no chaplain, spend some time with them, help, assist, pray, speak, give the sacraments, and later move to another unit. So these programs, they are one of the very few good things, but they were not created by Epiphanius. It was an initiative from outside. The priests from different churches come together and organize these missions. It is not due to Epiphanius. So I will make the second part of this video and speak on more issues, but I want to ask you, please support my service now. I will leave the account number in the description to this video, because it is very hard for me now to carry on my duty as a priest, because I am now outside the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. I am not more with Epiphanius, and I have very few people with me, so I am in great need of support. But what is the most important, please help to spread this information. Please share it on your social media, send it to your friends, send it to different groups, and even to government officials of your region and your country. We have to spread this information on the international arena, because it is very important to understand. And in the second part of the video, I will speak of how the actions of Epiphanius are ruining the Ukrainian society and causing inter-religious war here now in Ukraine, which is totally destructive. So I ask you very much, please support my channel, please like, subscribe. If it is possible, send me a donation, and moreover, please share this video with anyone who might be interested. Thank you, and God bless you all. Please pray for me and pray for the victory of Ukraine.